Welcome to BIA, Canada's top black media provider. Whether you're looking for shows on fashion, art, music, or simple lifestyle, we bring you the best content the black community in Canada has to offer and so much more. And better yet, do you have an idea for a project you'd like us to help you with? We provide equipment, studio, and office space, as well as a team of dedicated individuals to help you bring those ideas to life. So don't wait. Check out our new website at biamedia.ca for more information on how to contact us and start creating today. BIA Media, your way.
Hello, and welcome to Getting Real with Paula. My name is Paula Alphonse, and tonight I am speaking to Ben Caron on collective care and his human library project. Ben is a Los Angeles-based facilitator, events producer, vocalist, and songwriter. He has spent the last 15 years producing and performing for events, festival, retreats, concert, theater, and digital media all over the world. He has also, interesting, released 2 community-funded albums, and he is deeply passionate about personal and societal transformation in service to both the individual and the society we live in. You can hear his music and learn more about his many projects on his website as bencaroncreates.com. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest. Good evening, Ben.
Hi, good evening.
And thank you for making the time for us to exchange on the work that you do.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start with the very first question. Some of my guests find it, I don't like that question, but we're going with it regardless. If you had to use 5 words to describe yourself, what would these words be? And why did you pick them?
You know, I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to choose adjectives or just choose values. And so I decided to go sort of the values route because I feel like that's maybe just a better insight into who I am. And maybe it's a little more comfortable than me like describing myself with adjectives. But I can see why people are a little confronted by this question. But I would say, you know, core values for me are growth, my commitment to my own growth and really being a lifelong learner, courage, you know, having the courage to stand up, having the courage to have difficult conversations, having the courage to take risks and to try. I would say collective care, like an investment in the well-being of my community and my family and my relationships. Even though sometimes I fail at that and it's a journey, I think I'm always striving to try and be better in relationships. Let's see, I think that's 3. Is that 3 so far?
That's 3.
I'll say authenticity. I always strive to be authentic. And I'll say hope. I really feel that it's important for myself and for others to maintain a sense of hope, you know, the belief that the future can be positive and that things can get better. So yeah, just off the top of my head, those are 5 that I choose.
You did good. You did really good. And I'm saying I like them as if it was my choice, but they actually sum up what I know so far about you, but we're going to explore some more.
And I think they probably, like, from what I know about you, they also are similar to things that you value as well.
So maybe that's why I like them. I don't know.
Right.
Who knows? If anybody asks me that question, I might end up having something rather similar. Definitely authenticity and growth would be there, and courage. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds like it's also a big part of what your show is about too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You know, every time that I do a show, I learn something different. Whether I usually think I learn something about other people, but every now and then I learn something about me as well.
Well, that's, you know, that's one of the most powerful things about conversation, which I think we'll get to a bit later. But, you know, a big part of what I'm trying to facilitate and create in the world is more conversation between people, because I learn about myself through an exchange with other people, and other people get the opportunity to potentially learn about themselves while we learn about each other.
Yeah. And there's something about that one-on-one conversation that you can't compare to anything else, because for a small amount of time, this is where you get to, if that person lets you, you get to the soul of that individual, what makes him different. And that's the part I also do like about doing those segments with people all over. And for me, it's just about ensuring or giving space for the people to be themselves. And that's what matters. Yeah. So if I was to ask you, just so that the audience has a bit of understanding of you in your words.
Okay.
Can you share some of your career journey so far? And maybe in that conversation, because everything you seem to have done gives me the sense that you're an entrepreneur, and you might have been an entrepreneur from the get-go. So I don't know. Let us know.
Yeah. That word, I think, does resonate with me. I do identify with entrepreneur, and I actually had this conversation with a friend recently about how I feel like I gravitate a lot more towards opportunities that are a bit more entrepreneurial. Like I'm a self-starter. I'm a creator. I really enjoy building something from the ground up. A little bit of my history. I grew up in a really small town in Iowa. A rural town, which was a really beautiful experience in a lot of ways. I think it instilled in me some really wonderful values, especially including integrity, discipline, hard work, so many personal responsibility, so many values that I still like are core to who I am today. I was also, growing up, I was also like a very emotional, very artistic, and you know, soon to discover as I was growing up, a gay child. And so in the time that I grew up, it wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't go as far as saying acceptable, but it certainly, there was no other gay people in the town that I grew up in. And so I think my journey was really one of finding my way, like finding psychological safety where I was. So, you know, essentially modifying myself in ways that I felt like were going to keep me safe and maybe make me more acceptable. And then my journey since then has been about sort of finding my way back to my own authenticity, my own truth, my own self-expression. And so my life is a bit dual in the sense that I have sort of my artistic life, my artistic career. I went to school for theater arts and dance is what I got my degree in. I have been a professional songwriter, singer, recording artist since, you know, essentially moving to Los Angeles. But I also have this aspect of myself that is really about self-realization and personal transformation. And I think those two things stem from the same place, which is a desire to connect to my heart space, a desire to connect to the truest aspects of myself, to my true self, and to share that with the world. And as I've been learning to do that for myself, it really pleases me, it really lights me up to share what I've learned with others. And so I sort of approach things as sort of a facilitator practitioner. I really like the experience of working side by side with people to grow and to learn, to work kind of more in a peer-to-peer format, as opposed to, I don't consider myself enough of a master of anything to hold myself in that regard. But I love learning in community. I love growing in community. And so that's really what I create as a professional, is opportunities for us to learn, grow, and express together. And that's how I spend my life. And that shows up in very entrepreneurial ways, because oftentimes I'm self-producing, I'm self-creating, I'm self-funding. And all these are all things I think that entrepreneurs have a lot of shared experience with.
Thank you for sharing. And you've mentioned that you were from Iowa and then you moved to Los Angeles. Did you move to Los Angeles from a perspective of feeling more accepted in that environment, or was it more about those entrepreneurial opportunities?
I think
Or a bit of both.
I think on a conscious level, it was that I wanted to pursue a career in the arts. I wanted to learn how to become an artist. I wanted to live the life of an artist. And I felt like I would have a better opportunity to do that in Los Angeles. I think on a subconscious level, so when I left Iowa, I was closeted, and I stayed closeted for a number of years through most of my college experience. And it took a lot of years for me to sort of like unpack my own internal homophobia, and to like learn to accept myself enough that I could courageously like be authentic with the people in my life. And so I think on a subconscious level, I was also searching for a place that I felt like had more space for me in my full authenticity. But that wasn't, I don't know if that was like at like a conscious level when I left.
And let's just say, I love what you're saying. My journey has not been the same, but I remember living with my parents, and in my community as a female, you leave your parents' home when you get married. But I didn't want to get married, at least not right now. And I wanted to go away. So I picked a job in the farthest part of the country from my parents, just so that I could, as you say, find yourself. Because without realizing, sometimes that space where you don't feel like you can be authentically yourself creates that sense that I have to be elsewhere to figure out who I am and then decide what's the next step for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and this could apply to any person. I really appreciate you sort of, calling in your experience as a woman. And I think that does resonate with my experience as a gay person, wanting to find a place in which like culturally, we can have a bit more autonomy, freedom, self-expression. But I think that that's true also for every person. I think that, in my experience, whenever one is in the same conditions or the same environment for a long time, it can be really easy, at least for me, to fall into patterns.
Yes.
And I think that one of the best ways for me to grow and to evolve is to break my patterns. I'm constantly searching for ways to disrupt my own patterns in my life, so that things can become more conscious and less like default. I'm just like, I'm utilizing the same behaviors over and over again without actually thinking about them. And I think going to a new place is a really powerful way to do that, because you can't lean on environment. You can't lean on relationships. So I mean, likely I would have left, or maybe I would have wanted me to leave no matter what, because I think it was important for me to sort of break my patterns and really learn who I was without the context of my childhood life.
And that's great, because it to me, it's really about finding self. It's starting your own journey and finding, how do I choose to define myself, rather than what that environment has already decided that I should be or how I should behave and all of those things. I know we connected over your project, which is the Human Library. Can you give us a little more detail as to what that is for the people who've never heard that? And
I'll talk about it all day. I love talking about it. In fact, it's part of my job is to talk about it. So I'm happy to talk about it. So I'm really grateful because I came into the Human Library sort of, synchronistically. I had seen a call to participate as part of the Burning Man experience. I was going to Burning Man, and there's lots of opportunities in which you can volunteer and participate at Burning Man. And I was lucky that one of the years that I was going to Burning Man, the Human Library had brought their project to Burning Man. And so it was sort of an intersection of two things that have never intersected otherwise. It was only that one year that the Human Library came to Burning Man, but it happened to be a year that I saw an ad from them and got to be involved. And so I've been with it ever since because I think it's just one of the most brilliant ideas that I've ever heard. And I get to sit in on these sessions and watch how incredibly effective the methodology is. So anyway, that's me first saying like, it's amazing. And now let me tell you what it actually is. So the Human Library is a 22-year-old international nonprofit that was started in Denmark as a way to try and create safe spaces for courageous conversations. And so what was happening back then, which is not different than what is happening now, is that in Denmark, there were different groups of people that were sort of like polarized against one another or were fighting against one another. There was a lot of like bigotry at the time, in my understanding. And this, our founder, Ronnie Abergel, he wanted to create an opportunity for people who had different lived experiences to just like simply have a conversation where they could learn about each other's lived experiences. And so what we do is we create this space that we call the Human Library. The public is invited to come into the space either on Zoom or in person. And you get to check out a quote unquote human book, which is a volunteer who's there to have a 30-minute conversation with you where you can ask them anything. They're trained and they're there specifically because they want you to ask them the difficult conversations, the difficult questions, the questions that you maybe have been too afraid to ask because you're worried that you're going to get the language wrong, which is a lot of what keeps people from having conversations. They're like not easily offended. And if they are offended, they're willing to like speak through that with you and like work that out without judging, and without making somebody wrong. So it ends up being this really beautiful, safe space where like expansive opportunities for growth show up. And part of my job is I'm a librarian in the Human Library. I'm also one of the producers or the event organizers, and I'm also a book. So I get to see it from a lot of different angles. And for me, I've sat through, listened to, participated in some of the most beautiful radical conversations where people really are vulnerable and ask the thing that they're afraid to ask. And on the other side of that discomfort comes like expansion, incredible learning shows up. And I just love it. We can talk about this all day.
I know. And there's this part where most people, when there's something that they're not comfortable with, that discomfort space is usually when they retreat. And what you're doing is you're pulling them in and say, go ahead, ask that question.
Yes.
Say that statement that you've always wanted to say. We'll answer. And there's no consequence. As you say, it's totally safe space. So therefore, as you do this, to me, there's a bit like two experience taking place. I'm challenging myself, but I'm also going out of my comfort zone and reaching out to someone else who in everyday life I might have never connected with or dare to ask. We would have crossed paths and that's it.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest gifts that I've experienced. Obviously the pandemic has contained quite a lot of hardship and has been traumatic in many ways, but there are gifts and silver linings that I've been able to find from the experience. And one of them is that the Human Library before the pandemic it took place entirely in person. They'd never even considered doing the events online. But when the pandemic happened, the organization was like, well, we can't stop doing what we do. Like, the world needs this experience. And so we moved our entire system to Zoom. And we're actually soon to have an app that's actually going to be launched where people can like have an app on their phone and attend a human library event through the app. And the brilliant part of it is that when I produce an event now, when I used to produce an event before, it would just be local people from Los Angeles who are attending this event. Now I produce an event and there are people from every continent, every like country around the world. It's truly like humanity comes together in these spaces and learns across borders. They learn across cultures. They learn across generations, across religions. It's one of the most like sublime expressions of human potential that I've ever seen. And it's so simple. It's just a bunch of people talking in a Zoom, you know, like, and that's all it needs to be.
And the beauty about it is like there's no script. So you don't have to say, I have to prepare something. It's just you ask me and I share some of my journey. So there's that connection, that sense that this would not be one of those repeated events where I'm just, okay, so here we go. Da, 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 my name is, I do blah, blah, blah. So it's not that. It's really, it feels like it's always spontaneous.
Yes, always spontaneous, always different. I learn something new and something new happens every single time, which makes it very alive. Yeah, the potential is infinite because the conversation goes wherever the questions go. And so one question will lead to another question, will lead to another question, and that chain of questions creates a whole new paradigm or a whole new possibility from it. So I'm never bored. Like, I've attended hundreds of these events and I've listened to hundreds of these conversations, and never once do I get bored because never once are they the same. And they're always transformative. Like, I hardly ever listen to a human library conversation and be like, meh, you know, like that was kind of like, you know, it didn't really
Deja vu or whatever.
Every single conversation that I've ever listened in on has some nugget of like something really spicy or juicy or interesting. It's a win. It's a real winner. I didn't invent the organization. I'm just like a big fan and like very, very
but there's something about partaking into something that feels that it's connecting me, who I am, to the other, but then it's also part of your larger mission. So the human library might not be your project, but it fits in with what you want to accomplish and what you see as my way of changing the world.
Yes, it's there's and I've only seen this like on the internet and memes, so I can't like vouch for the authenticity of this, but I've seen in like memes this concept of ikigai, I think is how it's pronounced, and it's a concept in which like what you can get paid to do, what you're passionate about, what people need, and I forget what the fourth one is. Like what your dharma is or your like soul's mission is. When those things come together, there's like a sweet spot in life. And I feel like with this particular project, I've found that sweet spot. It tickles me in all the ways I like to be tickled. And so, yeah, I love it. I love it.
Can you share maybe some of your takeaways or insights about that project?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about in the project is that judgment is just a natural part of the human instinct, that we have evolved as creatures to utilize judgment as a way to look at our surrounding environments and suss out where danger is. And I think what is radical to me about the human library is that it doesn't judge judgment. I think sometimes like we can utilize shame as a way of like, some people will utilize shame as a way of trying to create change. And I think in the human library, there's no shame involved in what we're up to. It's like when we train our books, we say, well, you will likely judge the people that are coming in and asking you questions, because somebody might come in and dress a certain way or talk a certain way or something, and it might trigger in you an experience that you had with somebody from your past. And it would be easy as a book for me to shut down, to not be available to the conversation. And so as a book, I have to invite myself to try to unjudge my readers, the people that I'm having the conversation with. And the same goes, that's the invitation we're extending to the public who are coming in. And so I think that's sort of like reciprocality of like humility and generosity and like accepting that we all judge, and that what we're here to do is to sort of grow and evolve and hopefully like reprogram some behaviors. That sort of like radical equality in the space, and like that humility that shows up is it's part of why I think it's so effective, because people aren't on guard. You know, they're not like, oh God, I don't want to be the bad one. You know, like, oh, I don't want it to be pointed out that I have judgment, because then I'm, you know, that's really what makes it a safe space. So I would say that, like, the sort of, you know, that conception that we're all equals and we're all peers in this space and we all judge and we're all learning. And then the other thing that always shows up for me is just like the simple power of conversation, of having a real exchange, of really listening and really like asking the right questions. I just think if we could start doing that more often in more places around the world, a lot of problems would naturally be solved.
It's interesting for me because in my mind, we all know we all grow with those unconscious bias, and that's the way the brain works to keep you safe. But then the idea of having those conversations is really working through those, but also becoming more aware of those things I do. So they come out, even if they're not the book, but having been with that person, sharing some information and feeling that reciprocity, that sense of welcome in that presence, it's hard to go away and say, oh, I hate those people. So, and that's the part, and that's how you start opening, instead of having stereotypes that doesn't have any feeling, that doesn't have any skin, any blood. It is now a human being. It's harder to make that, to pass those judgments in those moments.
And that's why I think that human is such a beautiful and powerful word in the project, the Human Library, because that's really what we're doing, is we're humanizing one another to one another. We're offering dignity. We're offering to see each other. And I think a lot of what we're struggling with societally in the world right now is dehumanization, taking people and flattening them down to a conception or an idea, a symbol, as opposed to like a fully nuanced, robust, like dynamic being, right? And we suffer these indignities, I think, in our world. This is something that you and I had talked about, is that treating each other with a baseline of dignity is in itself like radically transformative. It's very powerful. And so these spaces, there's sort of like a baseline of dignity in the space. You know, we agree to treat each other with respect, even if we're asking something in a messy way. We're still being respectful with one another. We're still treating each other with dignity. So yeah, I just think both of those things, humanizing and dignifying each other, it's the key. It's the ticket. Yeah.
And for me, there's another conversation in there that we often forget. Nobody wants to be invisible. I want to know that people see me and that they appreciate what it is that I bring. Who wants to go to their grave saying, I have done nothing all my life and I couldn't wait to get out of there? No one. So, and that's that point for me, that conversation, that opening up to other realities and at least trying to walk in somebody else's shoes for a little while and realize, we might have a lot more in common than we have that is different. And that's the part that we sometimes forget when we're applying those stereotypes.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a switch in that conversation, and I'm going to move towards something you said to me about the murder of George Floyd and how it shattered that perspective with respect to what was your reality. Can you tell me a little more on this?
Yeah, I think that, well, one, talking about dignity, the incredible indignity and
Mhm,
dehumanization that occurred in that act, beyond the violence,
mhm,
but the violence partnered with the indignity and the
mhm,
dehumanization of a human being,
mhm.
the inability to see him, right? You
Yes.
know, like you said, watching that video was devastating for me in the way that I think it was devastating for many people
Mhm,
around the world. And there were so many parts of it that were devastating. But it what it did is I had been involved, or at least like following and advocating for the Black Lives Matter movement in the United
mhm,
States, especially since Ferguson, you know, for a couple of
mhm,
years. But it really it really s- it really changed my relationship and my investment in the movement. And I think it did for a lot of people, and it certainly did for a lot of members of my own community. And I think the biggest invitation that I heard in that time, besides like show up, show up when it comes to like
mhm,
rallying and when it comes to advocating, is for people who are white or identify as white, um, and or who have benefited from white privilege, like educating ourselves on the history of racism and racial violence,
mhm.
in the United States, especially. And I know Canada has its own history as well.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh, and like taking responsibility for filling in the gaps that the education system in the United States seemingly like consciously creates around our racial history.
Mhm,
Uh, I really took that to heart, and a lot of people in my life really took that to heart. And so for me, it made me want to double down on my own investment, the amount of time, the amount of energy, the amount of care, heart, uh, artistry, that I was putting into to racial justice in the United States. And so, yeah, I've been on that journey since, and I'm happy to talk about any of that you want to talk about.
Today, May 25th, is actually the second year anniversary of his passing. To you, how have things evolved um, in terms of your knowledge about the history of slavery, in terms of your appreciation of some of those systemic barriers? What is different for you now?
I think through the education that I've taken on in the last year, I've read books like Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which is an incredible book, so incredibly effectively written, so powerfully written. I read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. I say these titles in case people are watching and want to read these for themselves. These are really good books to read. And I think what it did is it created a new lens through which to interpret reality. Um, so that as I'm moving through, like for example, this is just a little anecdote, but like I was in Los Angeles. I was getting my hair cut and in a barber shop where the back of the barber, or the front of the barber shop, was all windows facing the
Mhm.
street, and I was had my back to the window, looking in the mirror, and was getting my hair cut, and all of a sudden everybody in the barber shop sprinted outside, which is a very strange thing to occur in a barber shop. I'd never
Mhm.
experienced everybody just leaving without saying anything all at once. And I turned and looked and saw what had happened. The people who were facing out the window witnessed that there was a Black man who had been pulled over by police and had been thrown onto the ground. And everybody, there was no conversation, there was no
Yeah.
mention, nobody even said, this is what's happening. The people who saw it immediately ran outside. The people who didn't see it turned, immediately clocked what was happening, and immediately ran outside. Everybody pulled out their phones simultaneously and taped. I would say, like, and this wasn't just the people in a barbershop, people in the restaurants, people, like, everybody from all four corners of this intersection swooped together and had the same exact reaction at the same exact time without saying a word to each other, which is, we are here to witness and be sure we're holding the police accountable to this interaction.
Yeah, and sure. Yeah.
And like, that would never, I don't think that would have happened before. Like, I think that this new sort of like lens through which we are looking at reality, or at least like I witnessed everybody in that space looking at reality, and I look at reality, is just to be more aware and mindful of that, which for me as a person who benefits from white privilege, was always invisible. Like in the past, that might have happened. I would have had no idea that it happened. Or even if it was happening, it would not have occurred to me to pull out my phone and to go and be a witness or to stand and watch the police, right? So these types of shifts, I think, are happening. I at least in my experience, right? Like that was a very powerful experience for me. And I don't think that would have happened without the reckoning that we've been through collectively because of the murder of George Floyd. There's a lot more to say about it, but I mean, I think that to me is the most potent, like, lived experience I've had since then, that shows me how much things have changed in the last 2 years.
And I would say for me, even though we're in Canada, and even though we have the illusion that some realities are not the same, the fact still is that reaction when you see police and Black people, everybody slows down and need to see what is happening. Is it happening in a stance that it is the right thing to be happening, or would they need help? So yes, even here we have that the phone and checking, and okay, do we need to intervene in things? And it is a sad reality, because when we think about police, usually it's protection. And then something like this happened, and we have to, again, become a little more adaptive and figure out, how am I dealing with this? What this could possibly mean, and how do we manage this? Not obvious at all.
Well, and I think that, yes, and I think that what it reasserted was that whether we're talking about politicians or we're talking about police, that these systems that we've created, like seemingly theoretically, are meant to serve the public, the well-being of the public. And when the political system gets so out of balance that it's no longer in service to the actual public interest, or when the policing system has gotten so out of balance that it's no longer serving the public interest and instead is exploitative or violent or harmful, then it is the duty and responsibility of the population, us, those people that were in that barbershop and the people on the street corner, to reassert the fact that we are watching and you are here as a representative of us, you know, and that person that you're throwing onto the ground is our community member, and we're here to advocate for them. And what I appreciated, I'll say, what I appreciated in that space was everybody sat and respectfully videotaped and watched what was going on, but did not go to the place of, there was no like attacking, there was no like screaming. There was like a certainty of, it was like a centered power of, we the public are here to watch, and we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt that this is actually a lawful engagement that's going on, that you had some sort of justifiable cause. We're going to give the police the benefit of the doubt, but we are going to watch the entire interaction. We're going to videotape in case anything goes to a place that it shouldn't. And I think that that's a good balance to have. Like, I think it's, you know, a lot of what I'm trying to train myself to do is to assume benevolent intent, you know, to give people the benefit of the doubt.
But be ready.
But be ready in case, right? To like, to be in my own center and to understand what to do in case things they do go a different direction. And so I really appreciated about that interaction that everybody, and there were people of every race, every gender, every age group in that group that was surrounding and videotaping. It really represented the diversity of Los Angeles, I feel like, that I saw. And every single person was like giving the benefit of the doubt, but standing ready in case something was to happen. And who knows, that might have actually saved that person's life in that moment. That like,
Yeah,
that
and
level.
we don't know, but then at the same time, we're happy that it wasn't.
Yes.
Because when it took place the very first time in plain view, that's not how it ended. And I think it's what I call a collective conscience.
Yes.
It's just as a group, there's that sense that there's certain things we do not want to see being repeated. And, you know, have to figure out a way. The system is still there, but how do we work it in such a way that those individuals do not just have to lose their life? And again, not too long ago, someone lost a life again under the hands of a policeman. And this is the part where you do what you do, you're cautious, but what the portion I really like about it is that we're being more human. We're seeing life instead of seeing patterns or seeing those stereotypes. Oh, he must have done something wrong. And now it's just like, even if he has done something wrong, we want to make sure it's dealt with the proper way.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you said life, because I think that is something I think across the board, theoretically, everybody could get behind, you know, the preservation and respect for life. And that, and I think that expands beyond, like, that is the core of a lot more than just our humanistic issues, but like it's the core of our environmental issues. It's the core of our animal cruelty issues.
Yes.
It's the disrespect for life, right? The non-valuing of life, whether that is, you know, the natural world or the animal world or our fellow human beings.
I couldn't have said it better. And I'm also conscious of time, and I want to get to that other.
Okay.
On a different note, I know you are literally embarking on a new venture tomorrow. With River Angels and the Caravan. So do share some of those details as well. So if anybody wants to keep following you, they can actually do that too.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak on it. So I do leave tomorrow to go on the greatest adventure I've ever gone on in my life. And it's really an integration. I was talking about that concept where like your life's purpose comes together and you're like in the sweet spot. This project really represents that for me in a way that like has never been available to me in the past. And so what I'm doing is some colleagues, some collaborators of mine, my community and I are engaging on an 8-week journey across the country and back in what we call the caravan of compassion. And the idea is moving across the country and back and facilitating, creating spaces for conversations, like we mentioned earlier. And some of these events are going to be human library events that I'm creating with local partners around the country. Some of them are events that are utilizing a methodology from Braver Angels, which is a great organization to follow if you're interested in watching this. They specifically facilitate conversations across differences. So differences in ethnicity, differences in generation, difference in ideology, difference in like rural versus metropolitan, all of the sort of like polarizations that we find ourselves struggling with as a country. They have like a methodology to facilitate those conversations. So it'll be, you know, conversations across differences, human library events, and also just like pop-up moments that we're going to do where, you know, we're going to be driving along the road and we're going to stop in a town and sort of like just try and engage in conversations with people that we meet and see if we can generate greater understanding by approaching things with curiosity, really coming from the place of wanting to see, hear, understand, and value our fellow human beings, and ask great questions. and see what type of healing is available through that. And my vision for it is to fine tune, hone this project over the next 5 summers until it becomes a movement that is just like essentially an institution, something that people all around the country feel drawn to participate in, almost like a domestic version of the Peace Corps. You know, so like within the United States, like an inter-community Peace Corps, where we're learning how to create what I call like a neural net of compassion or a neural net of love, nodes of love all around the country, nodes of compassion all around the country, that hopefully will create a different reality for us in this nation. And it's a big old experiment. It's a giant leap of faith. You can learn more about what we're up to on my website, which I know is posted here, bencaroncreates.com, or you can follow us with the hashtag Caravan of Compassion on social media, and you can kind of see there's some of the most brilliant humans I've ever met are going on this journey, and we're all going to be posting about what our experience is like, mostly from the vantage point of wanting to like share and inspire and hopefully invite people into similar experiences or to create these experiences for themselves. Because like I said, my dream is that this becomes a movement that hopefully can heal the country and eventually hopefully the world. And so, yeah, that's the big adventure that I'm about to embark.
And I love it because to me, it's all about stretching perspective. It's all about changing what I've always assumed had to be done a certain way. So it connects with the human library, but it also, as you say, it's having those courageous conversations, because we've stopped talking. In a lot of environments, we stop talking. We cross paths, we say hi, but it's not, we're avoiding anything that could create
tension or conflict. Yeah, we don't know. I mean, we in a lot of ways, we just don't know entirely how to have these conversations. So that's why these organizations are so powerful, because they facilitate a safe space for it that people maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to create for themselves, you know? Yeah, our like through line of the byline of the project, the Caravan of Compassion, is courage. So courage to create a conversation, curiosity. So having the curiosity to ask people questions and be sincerely interested in what they have to say and what their life experience is, and then compassion. So once we actually understand where somebody's coming from and what they've gone through, trying to actually like feel into that experience with them and care about their suffering, care about their well-being. That's to me the 3-part journey of this is, you know, courage, curiosity, compassion.
This sounds so amazing. You know, it feels as though, oh, I want to be on that boat. And I know it's not a small group that's traveling with you. I think you've mentioned, is it 30, 40 people?
So there's like a core group that's a bit smaller that's going to go the whole way. But I would say 50 people are coming in and out of the journey throughout. This first year there are definitely public events that are going on throughout, and you can go to my website, bencaroncreates.com, to learn about those public events and register for events. There's also, you know, there's an aspect of it where because it's so experimental and proprietary and entrepreneurial, that for me, I'm enrolling the people in my life that I know have the skill sets to do something like this and become ambassadors for love. And you would be a perfect person for this. But it's a really like, it's the people in my life that I trust and really like I know the light and the gift and the love that they bring to everything that they do, because I know how tender this first experience is going to be, because nobody knows what we're up to. You know, we're a bunch of strangers that are just moving around the country. So I want to make sure we're doing this with a lot of skill, a lot of care, a lot of intentionality. So yeah, you can, I mean, if people want to follow the journey, they can either come to a public event, which will be on the website.
I wrote it down, and trust me, yes. We'll give publicity to that event, because I think the idea is so great. It is from a perspective where where you've mentioned the Peace Corps, and often with the Peace Corps is there's a problem, they come to the rescue and then they leave.
Right.
But you're arriving in an environment where we're not telling you there's a problem. We're not telling you we're coming to fix you. We're just here to have conversation, and see in those conversations, you start seeing the world a little differently.
Yes. Yeah. And that's so important. Thank you so much for saying that, because for us, there is not any, we really want to make it clear. And it's like I said in the beginning, I am a practitioner facilitator. So in the same way in the human library, we say that like everybody judges, like I'm learning these skills as we're doing it. And we're all learning it together. And so there's no hierarchy in this. It's so important for us in going about this, that there is a shared sense of generosity, humility in the way that we're approaching it. We're giving each other mutual dignity and respect, because it's not like we're coming in with some like intention of like fixing or being saviors or whatever. It's really like we all get to co-create a new paradigm together. As equals, as equal co-creators. And so, that is such a massive part of it.
It's not about the degree. It's not about the expertise. It's not about, I'm teaching you about concept. I'm learning with you what's happening in that space.
And it's every person, like the thing about the human library that's so beautiful, and I think that is going to be really important in this project, is that it is a synergy between two people. So if it's a one-sided interaction, it doesn't hold any of the power or the potential that it holds if both people are coming to the table in earnest with a sincere desire to connect. And so there is no one without the other, right? Like we are genuinely co-creating an experience with one another. So each person's contribution is equally valuable in that interaction.
And that's in a society where we often deciding people's value according to what we see about them, whether you came out of an expensive car or the city bus, and all of these things are often defining people without actually getting to know the people. So these conversations are completely different because we're removing all of those layers, extra layers, and having that one-on-one.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's why, I'll reiterate again, the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson is so powerful because it really lays out the ways our society is built as a caste system. And it's a caste system beyond, there's so many ways, and we all are privy to it. There's a genderized caste system. There's a sexuality caste system. There is a colorist caste system. There's an ableist caste system. There are myriad ways in which we rank each other and create hierarchy. And so for us, we really, I really want this project to be a dismantling is maybe not the right word, but like I want it to stand in as a alternate paradigm to the caste system, right? Like true equality, true mutual dignity, true mutual respect. And that can't happen if we think that any one person is more important or more valuable than the other.
That's it. And that's giving back to each individual their full sense of value, because technically we are born with value.
Yes.
Then whatever happens after the birth, there's a different conversation, but we are born with our value. It's a life. It's a potential. Last question. Oh, maybe second to last question. What would be your last key message for the audience? If they, after listening to this, what is that one thing you want them to remember?
To start where we're at, to start where I'm at, to start where you're at, in the sense that, I think that it can feel really daunting to look at the world and to feel like there's these intractable problems, that there are these massive issues. And I really believe that if every human being starts where they're at with what they have, at the level that they're at, without shaming ourselves about, like I say, I'm a practitioner. You know, like I'm constantly forgetting and relearning, constantly remembering myself, constantly falling off the path or falling out of my center and then having to find my way back. It's a remembrance. It's a practice, right? And so I would just say, you know, be graceful with myself, with yourself, to start where I'm at and to begin again and again and again, and as many times as it takes to integrate. That would be my takeaway.
And I like what you're saying, because what comes to my mind is I often tell people, especially the people who have the tendency to, it's not so much judging other people, but either comparing or judging themselves against some idea of where they should be. It's just remember, you're a work in progress. So wherever you are is exactly where you need to be. And this is for you to decide how I'm going to make the next move towards that place where I want to be, where I feel I can offer the world more things. Yes. And when I say things, more value, not things, because we all know materials are not solving all of our challenges. To the contrary.
As much as we're told that they will.
Oh gosh, no, it's not. The more toys you have, the more empty sometimes it feels, because, you know, what do I do? How much can I spend there? So
yeah, I think we've witnessed the limits of materialism for sure.
So I'm gonna ask, but I think you've mentioned it a few times. How can people get in touch with you or hear about some of your future activities?
Thank you for asking. I will say the way that I have a little bit of a tension with social media, just because of, you know, the ways in which I think many of us have become aware of the sort of exploitative nature of social media. So I just say that to say that I am on social media, and I think that, like, staying in touch with me that way will be effective to the point that I participate in social media as much as I can, like, without harming myself. And so you can follow me on social media at Ben Caron Creates, and I'll be very intentional about what I'm putting out, and try and add as much value to your life on those platforms as possible. The more effective way, I think, to stay in touch with me is via my mailing list, which is on bencaroncreates.com. There's a little pop-up that'll pop up that says join the mailing list. I'm also super conscious of, like, how sacred people's inboxes are. So I try not to over email, but that's a great way to stay in touch. Yeah. But I also am going to publish all of the events that we're doing this summer, and just all the events that I do on the website. And lastly, you can follow hashtag Caravan of Compassion all summer long to kind of see what we're up to on that journey.
So I am keeping the hashtag Caravan of Compassion so that I'm sure that I see it. And I'm wishing you the best experience the whole way through. To me, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so fulfilling. But then at the same time, you're going to find those moments where it's just like, oh my God, if I could die right now, I would, because it's this sense where I've experienced something that is so unique, so blissful, so unexpected. So that's what I wish for all of you.
Yeah, I honor the power of your word, and I say so it is, for sure.
Thank you very much. And best journey for those 8 weeks.
Thank you, Paula. Hardly the way, hardly the way. Oh, 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 oh. Friends hear me well, friends hear me well.
dream last night.
Had a dream last night.
6 billion souls walking opened up their eyes. A little more love, a little more light, a little less drama in my life, a little more time remembering who I wanna be. I gotta stop punishing myself for the choices I made, for the things that I've done. Come on, come on. You know I love you. May we choose to be happy. May we learn to free our minds. May we